Hello, everyone. Say anything to anybody?
Hello.
Latin America's number 4.
Well, the good thing about looking at the foreign markets is it
Middle
gives you
East.
an idea of what the rest of the world is doing against us, right?
That's why we need to look at it 100%.
And Brazil, if you look at the Brazil chart right now, it's actually very interesting. It's been in a sideways consolidation since what month was the election down there?
was November because Bolsonaro came to Florida in like January and stayed for 2 months.
Okay.
He hung out in Orlando for 2 months.
All of these countries and all of these sectors have ETFs on them.
So that's the symbol EWX, right? Okay.
Correct. And Germany's EWG, Australia EWA, Canada's EWC. They used to have Russia, which they deleted.
So who's EWX? Who's that?
Brazil.
Oh, Brazil is EWX.
I'm not sure what you'd call this ugly pattern.
It's ugly.
It's definitely a bear flag. You have a bear flag in a bull flag. Look at that bear. From 2020, it shot straight up to 61 from
part
30,
of it.
30.
Yeah, you make a good point. Part of it is still sort of in a bull flag pattern, but it also looks like you could argue forming sort of a head and shoulder, no?
Yeah, I don't see a head and shoulder.
Well, from March of 2020 all the way up, and now it's coming back down. Oh, it already formed it, yeah.
But
Right.
you can see Brazil is the last 5 years, 10 years, it's all over the place. It's all over the place.
The Brazil chart is brutal. It's brutal, in my opinion. I've looked at it enough.
I mean, I couldn't even tell you where this thing's going.
Yeah.
His China, K-Web, which is
K-Web, wow.
I think they're internet companies, like they're tech companies, if I remember correctly. Look at how that thing's been hammered.
Wow, I'm adding all these symbols into the.
Well, what I'm saying is, you notice our stock market hasn't followed that same path, has it?
Not yet. It could, though. It could.
It kept coming down until October, but I don't think the SPY fell quite like that.
No, yeah, you remember the general shapes? It's still up like this, and it's still in a mini uptrend at the moment.
Remember how I told you, in my opinion, everything had to go back to, back before the days. Dan, if the thesis is we've had all this free money pumped in by the government and by the Fed, if that all has to come to an end, because the rest of the world says it's not going to happen anymore, that means that everything has been artificially inflated, that has been pumped up and has to fall back to pre-conditions. And look at the China market. Look at where it went to. Yeah. It had never been that low before.
Everything's been artificially inseminated, yeah.
So if you look at that, China, fell. Now, granted, they were locked down, but you understand what I'm saying is, so if we go to the SPY, or let's go to the QQQ. Look at that. Look at that. Look at it. Keeps going. I mean, it's like one of these blood clots. Just keeps going and going when you pull on it. It's like a string. Look at that, 2009, right? Look at it.
Uptrend, I told you. All the major indices are the same shape. Do you agree?
So the QQQ was at 40 in 2009, and it got up to 400. So it went up a factor of 10 in 12 years, 13 years.
It 10x'd in a decade. 10% a year. Yeah,
so think about that. If the GDP only goes up 2%, what is that? That's like 25. If you compound that, 20% compounded over 10 years, what are we looking at? 25% maybe? So that should have been 50. Should have gone from 40 to 50. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah, I do. So let's say,
So so look at this. So look at where we fell. We didn't even fall down to the pandemic levels.
so let's say the compound.
The Chinese fell way down to here. They were at like the equivalent of like 25.
Yeah, but were they doing quantitative easing like we were? I don't
Oh
think
yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Oh, they were?
Oh, absolutely.
I know well, you know what? I know they were doing some.
Absolutely. They've been inflating their GDP for years, Dan. But they've been doing it. You know, the difference is the United States has been pumping money into the stock market and into financial instruments, whereas China has been building roads, trains, bridges, cities
Right.
to
No,
nowhere.
infrastructure. Yeah. They've got something to show for it, don't they?
What goes up must come down. So all I'm doing is saying the Qs are still overvalued for what, and especially the Qs. The Qs are companies that live on free money. Live on free money.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I mean, what would you call this chart? Would you call this a pretty chart? This is kind of, what do you see when you see this chart?
Ooh, cute. Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't matter what it is.
it's ugly. Triple Q.
You
Yeah,
should
I
just look
follow
at it.
triple Q. Yeah, it's a head and shoulder, man. It's breaking into a head and shoulder. It has been. It's in a short-term uptrend, to your point. Now, is that uptrend going to continue going up to form essentially an inverted head and shoulder, where it'll double top to high point where it was, or?
Yeah, which could also be forming the second half of an M.
Well, you beat me to it, because if it goes back up to the top, then if it starts coming down, it's forming a big ass M.
Which would bring it right back down to here.
Yep. I think that's probably more the likely scenario. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to know very shortly. If this thing starts going, then the next stop is right here.
Yeah, I think
362.
My thesis is, I think it's going to continue to drift up. I do. They're not ready yet to let this thing go. But when they do, look out below. It will come crashing down hard when they let it go. I don't think they're quite ready yet. I think we're getting close, but I don't think they're quite ready. Just my opinion, based on everything I see, absorb, talking to you, looking at videos, reading, everything I'm absorbing, I don't think that they're quite ready yet. I don't think you're wrong. It's got to come down sooner or later. I don't see any other way. But I think we've got a little bit of float time left.
Oops. Not what I wanted. So, yeah, I've got to.
But, or it could reverse direction tomorrow and head down. Call it that we're still in the mini bull. And I think the mini bull's going to run for a little bit longer.
Well, the problem is if it gets up to only this level right here.
You tell me if you disagree with me. I believe in the short term it's going to keep drifting up.
I think we will know. I can't say that right now. I think there's a huge amount of uncertainty because, as I've told you, it doesn't depend on the United States anymore. It does not depend on the United States anymore. It comes to when the rest of the world is going to say,
okay,
no mas.
So I need to qualify what you said. In the short term, the immediate term, right this second, and for the immediate short-term future, it still depends on the U.S. But to your point, intermediate term, whatever that is, and long term, I totally agree with you that the rest of the world is starting to make that pivot, 100%. They have been for a bit. It's going to take a little while longer, though. They're not going to be able to do the pivot overnight. You know that, and it's been going on for a while.
It's not overnight. It's been since 2014. This has been going on,
right.
And so this is the thing is realistically when you look at that pattern right like that, Dan.
Yeah. There's more downside. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the path of least resistance. Look at how heavy that is. Look at you like symmetry. Well, what does symmetry tell you is going to happen?
Well, yeah, symmetry says
Symmetry
it could
tells
go as
you,
low as 200.
yeah, symmetry tells you it's coming back
In
here
about 2
before
minutes.
this.
Go ahead.
Symmetry tells you that this is really the next, once it gets through, if it breaks 273,
Yeah.
right?
Dude,
So if
you
it
make
breaks,
it, yeah.
if it breaks this number,
Yeah.
it's not gonna, think of all the work. Dan, when you go to the gym and you lift 300 pounds, that's a lot of exertion. That's a lot of work. So
Just to get to that level and then to maintain it.
So now you're trying to get back up to your record weight of 500-pound bench press. Well, it probably isn't going to happen. It's probably coming back down here where it wants to go.
Absolutely.
Because I've been telling you, pre-COVID is where everything's going. Pre-COVID.
Dude, I agree.
Well, pre-COVID is January of 20, basically 219, 220.
Look at, bro, I characterize technical analysis in 3 ways: basic physics, basic shapes or patterns / geometry. And geometry and basic physics exist for a reason. We learn these disciplines through observing the natural environment, right? And we develop principles and properties that hold true, right?
Yeah, because we're forming a shoulder right now.
Yeah. We know if we throw a ball up in the air, particularly the more straight up it is, it's going to get to a point and then it's coming back down the same path at terminal velocity. We know that versus, at more of an angle, it could get a little more distance, whatever. We know this. And it's the same thing with prices. They move the same way. So, and they exert and experience gravity and inertia and all that, right? Through supply and demand, right? We know this. The market is the atmosphere, and the supply and the demand is to me, the physics of it, right? The force, the pulling, and yeah, I mean, it could go either way at this point. Like I said, it could go down to 200-ish, or it could float up to.
It really. I mean, well, think about it. If it wasn't for, this was back in February when the banks, when these banks failed. Look at how it popped. When they injected all that money to the banks, notice how it popped. So again, it relied on free money. So the Fed supposedly, who knows? They say one thing and they do another. But realistically, if it wasn't for that intervention by the Fed and the government, this was going to roll over and come back here.
Oh, yeah.
So the short answer is I have no idea what's going to happen right now. What should happen is this should roll over and come back.
Okay, so
to 212, 215.
See, the thesis, we believe in the short term, it will continue to float up in an inverted head and shoulder pattern to possibly as high as, to possibly as high as 370.
No, why? No, that's what I'm saying. Why would it stop at 370? If it's going to do all that work to get up to 370, why would it stop there?
Yeah, it's at least going to go there. And I agree with you that if it gets to that level, it's going to float to the top, to the previous high. Yeah.
This chart, what that chart shows us, the cues anyways, and I could be wrong, and this is the cues, what it's telling us is, you see how it popped above this trend line right here at 310?
Mm-hmm.
If it stays above that line and goes further, it right now, the last 2 months, the market believes that free money is coming back into these markets. They think it's going back to happy days again. That's the only explanation.
Yep.
Just to conclude here.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to know within the next couple weeks. I think if it breaks this what do we say on
273,
310. If it breaks 310 and goes lower with confirmation, okay, then I think we're we're quickly coming down to 266. And then I think we go back to the January levels. And I think, again, if you want me to guess what the Fed's going to do, I don't know. I mean, I find it hard to believe, that these people are going to allow that to happen. But
I agree.
you know what I mean? They're gonna, but if they do that, Dan, that means the end of the US dollar. If they either have to save the dollar or they have to save the stock market.
Wow. That's big.
Once
Okay.
we get through Apple's earnings
Yep.
and the Fed meeting on by May 5th, we will know.
So this week is dated 4/22, next week 4/29, whatever, right?
And I think in the future, what we should start with is we should start with what is unloved and where is money going to pour into? Where are the opportunities? That's what we should start with.
Okay, if we stick to this outline, like high level macro, drill down markets, regions, industries, companies, that is exactly the point to then tell us, right, where we think the shift is going. That's the reason for doing what we're doing. That's
absolutely, because I just want to point out this thing for 30 seconds before you go.
Okay.
Because this ties into the energy that we didn't get to when we were in it. But you see that natural gas has been beaten like a drum. Have you noticed that?
Yes, I have actually.
I have to believe that there's contango just looking at the chart. But if you can get a natural gas play and buy it and hold it.
Yep.
And UNG, I think, has contango. And what that means is contango means that the natural slope is down.
Exactly.
Because when they roll future contracts, they have to pay, they lose money every time. So that means they lose 3, 4, 5% a year just from operating. But if you can identify, and I don't know these off the top of my head, a good natural gas play.
Thesis, we believe in the short term it will continue to float up in an inverted head and shoulder pattern.
No, that's your thesis.
Okay, let me finish. To possibly as high as 370 level and probably previous high. However, the opposite could happen and drop to the 200 range. If it breaks 310 on the downside, it can quickly go to 266 range, which is your part. Okay, so I'm not saying you're wrong. Okay,
I'm not saying I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm saying I'll know by May 5th.
But I included your notes in there because they're legit in my mind. They're legit. It could go that way sooner than you think. I think we've got some float up time.
Well, that's what Texas Bob always says, that I like what he says is it's good to have a thesis, but let the markets tell you what they're going to do.
100%. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we think the market's going to tell us. We have to observe and kind of be positioned accordingly.
Yeah, peace. Have a great weekend.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
All right, man. Bye.
Bye.